How many layers of frozen earth must a footstep penetrate before it reaches the memory of a warmer world? Is the wind a physical barrier or a sentient predator stalking the edges of your perception? Can you truly define silence when the very air around you cracks with the weight of its own density? What if the history of your species was written not in ink, but in the desperate condensation of a single breath? Do you believe that survival is a choice, or is it a biological reflex triggered by the absolute absence of mercy? You imagine the Ice Age as a static white void, a pristine postcard of crystalline beauty, but the reality is a brutal grey orchestration of tectonic pressure and biological grit. Here, in the windswept plains of what will one day be called the American Northwest, the horizon does not promise a new day. It merely threatens a different kind of endurance. You wake not to the sound of birds, but to the rhythmic, heavy thud of your own heart, echoing against the walls of a structure made of mammoth bone and tightly stitched hides. The air inside is thick with the scent of old smoke, dried musk, and the lingering metallic tang of frozen earth. As you shift your weight, the furs covering you groan under the frost that has accumulated from your own respiration during the night. The transition from sleep to awareness is not a gentle fading of dreams, but a sharp, stinging realization of the cold pressing against the hide walls. Your hands, calloused and mapped with the scars of 1,000 flint-knapping sessions, reach for the edge of the perimeter. The texture of the inner lining is rough, greasy with the fat used to waterproof the seams, a necessary engineering feat against the moisture that seeks to rot your sanctuary from the outside in. This shelter is not merely a home, it is a pressurized vessel of human will holding back a continental glacier. You feel the vibration of the permafrost through the soles of your feet, a low-frequency hum that reminds you that the ground itself is a living, shifting sheet of ice. The light that begins to filter through the smoke hole is a bruised purple, a weak luminescence that struggles to define the shapes of those sleeping around you. You observe the geometry of the lodge, the way the massive tusks curve upward to support the weight of the roof, a testament to a time when biology was the only architecture available. Every knot in the leather cord, every tuck in the heavy pelt, is a calculated defense against a climate that views your existence as a statistical error. You realize that without this structural intelligence, the heat of your body would dissipate into the tundra in a matter of minutes, leaving nothing but a brittle statue of flesh. The first movement of the day is a slow, deliberate calibration of joints. The cold has a way of thickening the fluid in your knees and elbows, making every gesture a heavy, mechanical labor. You crawl toward the center of the space where the embers of last night's fire lie, buried under a layer of protective ash. This is the altar of your survival. To lose the spark is to lose the day. As you gently blow into the gray dust, a faint orange glow illuminates the deep lines of your face, reflecting in eyes that have grown accustomed to tracking movement in the blinding glare of the snowfields. The smoke rises, stinging your nostrils, a familiar sensory anchor that connects you to the lineage of firekeepers who crossed the land bridge before you. Outside, the world is waking in a different way. The wind howls through the gaps in the rock formations, a sound like 1,000 flutes being played by a giant. You step toward the entrance, peeling back the heavy flap of bison skin. The air that hits your face is not just cold, it is a physical strike, a vacuum that sucks the moisture from your eyes and the warmth from your throat. The landscape is an infinite stretch of tundra, where the grass is brittle and golden, trapped in a permanent state of dehydration. The sun is a pale disk, hovering low on the horizon, offering light without the comfort of heat. You look at the vastness of the American interior, a corridor of ice and stone that demands a level of physical perfection you are only beginning to understand. The light reveals the tracks of animals that passed by in the dark, the deep, circular impressions of a mammoth, the sharp, hurried prints of a short-faced bear. You are a guest in a kingdom of giants, a small, warm-blooded anomaly in a world of sub-zero giants. The stability of your morning ritual is the only thing standing between you and the chaotic indifference of the Pleistocene. Every breath you take is a victory of internal combustion over external entropy. You feel the weight of the spear leaning against the bone frame, its stone tip a jagged tooth of volcanic glass, cold to the touch but ready to bite into the hide of the world. This is the beginning of your 24 hours. A cycle of movement where every calorie spent must be justified by a calorie gained. The silence of the morning is broken by the distant crack of a calving glacier, a sound like a mountain breaking in half, reminding you that the very foundation of this continent is in a state of slow, crushing motion. You are here because your ancestors refused to die, because they learned to read the language of the wind and the grain of the wood. As you prepare to step out into the blinding white expanse, you understand that your perception of comfort has been permanently shattered. There is no room for luxury in the permafrost, only the relentless, beautiful pursuit of the next heartbeat. This is the threshold of human history, where the first Americans began to map the geography of a new world with their own blood and sweat. Your journey has just begun, and the secrets of the ice are waiting to be unraveled by those brave enough to look into the storm. Confira-se já é inscrito neste canal, because here we dive into the depths of history to rescue the essence of our own existence. And you will not want to miss the revelation of what truly happened when man and ice became one. The transition from the relative safety of the bone-framed shelter to the open moor of the Alaskan tundra is not a movement of space, but a transformation of being. You are no longer a sleeper, you are a precision instrument of observation. Your eyes, squinting against the horizontal glare of a sun that refuses to climb, begin to scan the horizon for the slightest deviation in the landscape's texture. This is the anatomy of the hunt. A functional progression where every tool you carry is an extension of your skeletal system, and every sense is tuned to a frequency of survival that modern ears have long since forgotten. You feel the weight of the spear thrower, the atlatl, nestled against your palm. It is a masterpiece of prehistoric engineering, a lever that artificially extends the length of your arm to grant you the power of a much larger predator. The wood is smoothed by the oils of your skin, flexible yet resilient, capable of storing kinetic energy that will soon be unleashed with lethal intent. At the tip of your spear sits a Clovis point, a leaf-shaped blade of translucent chert, fluted at the base for a perfect aerodynamic fit. You remember the hours spent by the fire, the rhythmic click-clack of the pressure flaking, the way the stone resisted until it yielded to the precise application of force. That blade is not just a weapon. It is a concentrated fragment of human intellect, a physical manifestation of the need to pierce the impenetrable hides of the Pleistocene giants. You walk with a deliberate, rolling gait, placing each foot carefully to avoid the treacherous crust of hidden ice pockets. The sound of your movement is a series of muffled crunches, a rhythmic percussion that marks your entry into the hunting grounds. The air is so dry it feels like powdered glass in your lungs, yet it carries the subtle, complex scent of the land. You catch the faint, musky odor of damp wool and old ammonia, the unmistakable signature of a herd in motion. This is not a search. It is a dialogue between your nervous system and the environment. You kneel to examine a depression in the permafrost, running your fingers over the edge of a track that is larger than your head. The mud at the bottom is still soft, not yet reclaimed by the creeping frost, telling you that the beast passed this way less than an hour ago. You can almost feel the phantom heat of its massive body lingering in the air. The tracking is a mental reconstruction of a physical event, a way of seeing through time. You observe the way the dwarf willow branches have been stripped of their bark, the height of the bite marks indicating a creature of immense stature. The contrast between the fragile, stunted vegetation and the raw power of the megafauna is a constant reminder of the scale on which you operate. You are a small creature in a world of monsters, yet your ability to read these signs gives you a structural advantage that no amount of muscle can replicate. As you move deeper into the plains, the wind shifts, bringing with it the distant, low-frequency rumble of a shifting glacier, a sound that vibrates in your chest more than it registers in your ears. The landscape begins to undulate, offering ridges that you use as concealment. You stay low, your body mimicking the grey and brown tones of the tundra, becoming a ghost in the tall, yellowed grass. The silence here is a living thing, a heavy veil that can be torn apart at any moment by the scream of a predator or the thunder of a stampede. You check the binding of your footwear, the thick bison leather wrapped tightly around your calves, ensuring that no heat escapes and no moisture enters. Your survival depends on this thermal integrity. If your feet freeze, the hunt ends, and you become the hunted. You see them now, silhouettes against the pale, bruised sky, a small group of bison antiquus, their horns sweeping wide like the handles of ancient urns. They move with a slow, deliberate majesty, unaware that a shadow is closing the distance. You feel the adrenaline begin to circulate, a chemical fire that sharpens your vision and steadies your hand. This is the moment where the concrete reality of your tools meets the abstract necessity of the kill. You calculate the wind speed by the way the grass leans, the distance by the size of the animals against the horizon, and the angle of approach by the slope of the land. Every detail is a variable in an equation of life and death. The bison are an abundance of calories, a walking warehouse of fat, hide and bone that will sustain your camp for weeks. But they are also dangerous, capable of crushing a human ribcage with a single, panicked movement. You find yourself caught between the extreme stability of your plan and the utter fragility of your physical form. To fail here is not just a personal loss, it is a systemic failure for your tribe. You wait for the lead bull to turn, for the moment of distraction when it lowers its head to graze on the frozen moss. Your heart rate slows as you enter a state of total focus, where the world narrows down to the tip of your spear and the vulnerable point behind the animal's shoulder. The engineering of the atlatl is ready to transform your muscular tension into a piercing strike. This is the culmination of generations of anatomical study, a deep understanding of where the life force of a beast resides and how to reach it. As you prepare to rise, you realize that this hunt is the bridge between your biological past and your cultural future. It is a dance of shadows on the edge of the world. You should comment the phrase, "I am the hunter of the frozen dawn," because this sentence captures the raw, primal connection between your ancestors and the land they conquered with nothing but stone and courage. You feel the tension in the atlatl, the wood groaning slightly as you draw back, a sound that is lost in the whistling wind. The bison shifts its weight, a mountain of fur and muscle that seems almost too large to be real. You are a part of this landscape now, a functional component of the Beringian ecosystem, a predator that uses thought instead of teeth. The moment of release is approaching, a fraction of a second that will determine the fate of your day and the survival of your kin. You are the apex of a long line of survivors, and today the ice will witness the power of the human spirit. The light is changing, the pale sun casting long, distorted shadows across the snow, turning the world into a theater of high-contrast movement. You take a final deep breath, feeling the cold air stabilize your core, and prepare to bridge the gap between intent and action. This is the anatomy of the hunt, a process of stripping away the unnecessary until only the essential remains: the stone, the arm, and the will to persevere against the crushing weight of the Ice Age. The ground beneath your feet does not merely hold you, it vibrates with a tectonic frequency that bypasses your ears and speaks directly to your marrow. You have moved beyond the smaller herds of bison and camelids, ascending into a realm where the biological architecture defies the limits of the imagination. Before you stands the woolly mammoth, a mountain of coarse, reddish-brown fur and curved ivory that seems to have been carved from the very glaciers that dominate the horizon. In this American interior, where the air is so thin and cold it feels like a physical weight upon your chest, you are witnessing the zenith of the Pleistocene. The scale of the creature is an affront to your own fragility, its tusks, spiraling upward in massive, elegant arcs of calcified history, are longer than your entire body, capable of sweeping aside a dozen men with a single, indifferent turn of its head. You watch the rhythmic swing of its trunk, a sophisticated organ of thousands of muscles, as it clears the snow to reach the dry, protein-rich grasses hidden below. The sound of its breathing is a deep, cavernous huff that sends plumes of steam into the frozen air, creating a microclimate of warmth and moisture in the immediate vicinity of its massive bulk. You realize that you are not just looking at an animal, but at a wandering fortress of survival. The logistics of such an existence are staggering. This beast must consume hundreds of pounds of vegetation every single day just to maintain the internal furnace that keeps the permafrost at bay. To hunt such a titan is not a feat of strength, but a complex organizational operation that requires the absolute synchronization of your tribe. You feel the grit of the earth on your palms as you press yourself lower into the frozen silt of a dry creek bed. The contrast between your small, shivering frame and the multi-ton reality of the mammoth is the ultimate measure of human ambition. If the spear finds its mark, you secure an abundance that transcends mere food. A single mammoth provides a mountain of meat that can be dried into pemmican, gallons of rendered fat for fuel and light, a hide thick enough to clothe an entire clan, and bones so massive they can serve as the structural beams for permanent winter settlements. It is a biological jackpot, a singular event that can change the trajectory of your lineage for a generation. Yet the margin for error is non-existent. One miscalculation, one shift in the wind, and the stability of your plan dissolves into the chaos of a stampede. You observe the mammoth's eye, a dark, intelligent orb set deep within folds of thick, insulated skin. There is an ancient wisdom there, a recognition of the world that predates your kind. The tension in the air is palpable, a static charge that makes the hair on your arms stand up against the inner lining of your furs. You check the flint point of your spear once more, ensuring the binding is tight. The stone must not only pierce the hide, but survive the impact against ribs that are as thick as tree trunks. This is the moment where the abstract desire for survival meets the concrete reality of physics. You are part of a coordinated surround, a human net being cast across the tundra. Communication is limited to subtle hand signals and the mimicry of bird calls, sounds that blend seamlessly into the ambient noise of the plains. The fragility of your life has never been more apparent than in this shadow, where a single step by the beast could crush your skull into the permafrost, without the mammoth even noticing the resistance of your bone. You are an interloper in a landscape designed for giants, relying on the structural integrity of your tools and the predictive power of your mind to bridge the gap. As the signal is given, the world erupts into a choreographed frenzy of movement. You rise from the earth, the atlatl becoming a part of your skeletal structure as you draw back. The spear is released not with a shout, but with a sharp, exhaled grunt. cutting through the freezing mist with the inevitability of a falling star. The impact is a dull thrid, a sound of stone meeting flesh and resisting the urge to shatter. The mammoth bellows, a sound so loud it feels like it is tearing the very fabric of the sky, a sonic wave that rattles your teeth. This is the true face of the Ice Age, the desperate, bloody struggle for caloric dominance. Even in the heat of the confrontation, you are struck by the tragedy of the scale. For you to live, this magnificent embodiment of the Earth's power must fall. The logistics of the kill now shift into the logistics of the harvest, a race against the elements and the scavengers that are already beginning to circle. You must work quickly before the meat freezes into an impenetrable block of ice, or the short-faced bears arrive to claim their share of the spoils. This is the high-stakes gamble of the first Americans, a life lived on the razor's edge of spectacular success and total extinction. The sheer volume of resources now available to you is overwhelming, a physical weight of responsibility. Every scrap of sinew must be saved, every drop of marrow extracted. You feel a profound sense of gratitude mixed with an existential dread, knowing that your existence is inextricably linked to the death of these titans. Give a like to this video because the story of our ancestors' courage against the giants of the past is the only reason we are here today to tell it. And your support ensures these ancient memories are never buried by the snows of time. You stand over the fallen giant as the pale sun begins its rapid descent, the heat from the carcass still radiating into the frigid evening. The silence that follows the hunt is even deeper than the one that preceded it. You are covered in the steam and blood of the Pleistocene, a small creature who has successfully harvested a piece of the world's power. The abundance is yours, but it has come at the cost of recognizing your own minute place in the cosmos. As you begin the grueling work of processing the kill, you realize that the mammoth was not just a prey item, but a mirror reflecting the immense scale of the challenge you face. The ice remains, the wind continues its relentless assault, but for tonight your fire will burn bright, and the bellies of your children will be full. The zenith of the mammoth is the zenith of your own will, a triumph of the spirit over the crushing indifference of the frozen earth. As the last sliver of the pale sun collapses behind the jagged spine of the mountains, the American interior undergoes a terrifying transformation. The blue hour is short, a fleeting transition into a darkness so absolute it feels like a physical weight pressing against your lungs. This is the descent into night, a period where the structural safety of your camp is tested by the invisible forces of a world that has ceased to be visual and has become entirely auditory and thermal. You are back within the perimeter of the mammoth bone dwellings, but the atmosphere has shifted. The air outside has dropped another 20 degrees, turning the moisture in your breath into tiny ice needles that prick your skin. You feel the urgency of the fire, the center of your universe as it struggles against the encroaching void. The engineering of the hearth is your primary defense. It is not just a source of warmth, but a barrier between the known and the unknowable. You watch the flames lick the underside of the heavy hides, casting long, flickering shadows that dance across the ivory ribs of the lodge. The contrast between the golden interior and the black, frozen expanse outside is the ultimate definition of human security. To step beyond the reach of the firelight is to vanish from existence. You listen to the sounds of the Pleistocene night, a symphony of predators and shifting ice. The distant, high-pitched yip of a dire wolf pack echoes across the tundra, answered by the low, guttural growl of a glacier moving a fraction of an inch in its sleep. These sounds carry through the thin, dry air with a clarity that is haunting, making the threats feel as though they are standing right behind the thin wall of bison skin. Your sense of hearing becomes hyperacute, mapping the movement of the wind as it swirls around the entrance. You feel the density of the darkness, a pressure that seems to search for any gap in your armor, any crack in the bone structure where the heat might escape. Inside, the tribe is huddled together, a collective of warm bodies sharing the burden of survival. The logistics of the night are about conservation, of calories, of wood, and of spirit. You chew on a strip of dried mammoth meat, the flavor of salt and smoke grounding you in the physical reality of your success. The abundance of the day's hunt is now being processed by your metabolism, fueling the internal fire that keeps your blood liquid. You observe the way the light glints off the obsidian scrapers being used by the elders to clean the fresh hides, a rhythmic scraping sound that provides a domestic counterpoint to the howling wind. This is the organizational heart of your species, the ability to maintain order and purpose even when the environment is trying to erase you. The fragility of your situation is highlighted by the flickering of a dying ember. You realize that your entire social structure, your language, and your future are all dependent on a few inches of burning wood. The night is a reminder that you are a tropical animal wearing the skins of Arctic beasts, surviving in a place where you do not naturally belong. The engineering of your clothing, the double-layered parkas, the grass-insulated boots, the moisture-wicking sinew is what allows you to exist in this sub-zero vacuum. You feel the texture of the fur against your neck, a soft, insulating barrier that represents the culmination of thousands of years of trial and error. Every stitch is a line of defense, a technical solution to the problem of entropy. As the hours pass, the silence within the lodge grows heavier, broken only by the crackle of the fire and the occasional murmur of a child in sleep. You are the sentinel of the midnight hour, watching the smoke rise through the hole in the roof toward a sky filled with stars so bright they look like holes punched in the fabric of the cosmos. The stars do not offer comfort. They are cold, distant markers of a universe that does not care if you wake up. You realize that the stability of your group is a fragile miracle, a small bubble of heat and light floating in an ocean of ice. This is where the legends are born. In the long hours of the dark, when the mind begins to see patterns in the shadows and hear voices in the wind, you find yourself reflecting on the path that led you here, across the bridge of land and into the heart of a new continent. The risks were immense, but the drive to see what lay beyond the next ridge was stronger than the fear of the cold. You are the vanguard of a new world, the first to dream under these specific constellations. Share this video with someone who needs to be reminded that we come from a lineage of survivors who conquered the darkest nights of the earth through nothing but cooperation and the refusal to let the fire go out. You feel a deep, ancestral pride in the structural integrity of your camp, knowing that while the world outside is a graveyard of frozen giants, inside there is life, warmth, and the promise of a tomorrow. The night is long, but it is not eternal. You prepare for the final hours of the cycle, the period of deepest cold before the first grey light begins to bleed into the eastern sky. The fire has burned down to a steady, pulsing glow, and you lean back against the mammoth skull that serves as your backrest, feeling the connection between your own spine and the ancient bone. You are part of a continuous chain of life, a functional piece of a much larger story that is still being written in the snow. The darkness has not broken you. It has only refined you, stripping away the trivialities of existence until only the core of your humanity remains. The first grey fracture in the eastern horizon marks the end of your 24-hour vigil, but it is not merely the return of light. It is the final revelation of your place within the architectural memory of the planet. As you step out of the lodge for the last time in this cycle, the air is at its most brittle, a temperature that turns the very concept of liquid into an impossibility. You look back at the structure that held your life, the mammoth bones and bison hides, and you realize it is more than a shelter. It is a vessel that has carried the fire of human consciousness through a sea of ice. The concrete reality of your survival, the stone tools, the caloric harvest, the thermal engineering, now ascends into a higher meaning. You are no longer just a biological entity competing for space in the Pleistocene. You have become the architect of a new world's future. The fragility you felt in the presence of the mammoth and the crushing weight of the night has been transformed into a profound stability. This is the legacy of the bone, the understanding that the materials of the earth can be reshaped by the human will to create a legacy that outlasts the flesh. You observe your hands, red and cracked by the frost, and see them as the primary tools of a species that refuses to be defined by its limitations. The transition from the desperate hunt to the organized camp is the foundation of everything that will follow in the history of the American continent. You are the first to plant the seeds of culture in the permafrost, the first to map the spiritual geography of these mountains and plains. The contrast between the immense, indifferent glaciers and the small, flickering warmth of your community is the ultimate proof of your persistence. Every element of your day, the tracking, the killing, the firekeeping, was a functional necessity that has now been elevated to a social ritual. You feel the weight of the ancestors who crossed the Bering Bridge behind you, and the weight of the millions who will walk these lands after the ice has melted into the sea. The ice is not your enemy. It is the whetstone upon which the human spirit has been sharpened. As the sun finally clears the horizon, casting a long golden light that turns the tundra into a field of diamonds, you recognize that the true zenith was not the death of the giant, but the survival of the small. The structural intelligence you applied to the bone and stone is the same intelligence that will one day build cities and touch the stars. You are the bridge between the primal past and the unimaginable future. The meaning of your journey is written in the tracks you leave in the snow, tracks that will be covered by the next storm, but whose impact is etched into the very DNA of the world. You have mastered the logistics of the extreme and discovered that at the center of the cold, there is a heat that cannot be extinguished. This is the final lesson of the frozen dawn, that humanity is not a guest of the earth, but its most resilient expression. You stand tall against the wind, a figure of grit and vision, ready to begin the next cycle of the sun. Check if you are already subscribed to this channel, because if you watched until here, it is because you like this case. Leave a comment saying, "I watched until here," so that I can get to know you and know who really likes the stories here on the channel. Leave your like and share this documentary with those who seek to understand the hidden strength in our own origin, so that the flame of knowledge continues to burn through the centuries.